Alrighty, I think we might go ahead and get started. I was just vibing out to the lo-fi music, so hopefully I'll stop doing that and we'll get to some cool stuff today. Morning, everyone, or evening, wherever you are in the world. It's good to see you and welcome to another Checkbox webinar. My name is Min and you've joined the Accelerating Deals with Checkbox and Salesforce webinar. It's going to be super interesting. I hope you get a lot out of it, so I'm really looking forward to it. And just a few housekeeping rules before we get started here. There's a couple of things that we're going to go through today. So sit tight, relax, grab a cup of tea. It's going to be great. If you have any questions in the bar, either here or here, there's a Q&A section. Feel free to chuck your questions in there throughout the webinar. I know the struggle of coming up with a question and forgetting it at the end. So please, 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 I encourage you to chuck any questions there. There'll be a poll towards the end, so look out for that. But of course, as always, the most important thing is that you attend, take away something about Checkbox, take away something about Salesforce. So hopefully you get a lot out of today. By way of introduction, my name is Min. I'm one of the product managers here at Checkbox. And so kind of on the team looking after making sure that our product brings value to our customers and our prospects. So really excited to bring this one to you today and walk you through our latest new feature, the Salesforce integration. So as we jump into the agenda today, I wanted to kind of share what today's structure will look like. So first, we'll kind of look at some of the challenges that have made the Salesforce integration ripe for kind of being placed within our platform. And so we're going to be focusing largely on the challenges that legal are facing today. Now, mindful that not everyone in this webinar today is from a legal background. That's okay. The Salesforce integration will be equally as valuable. And so hopefully through the course of this demonstration, you'll get some ideas about how Checkbox and Salesforce fit together. We'll then look at how a Checkbox plus Salesforce integration serves legal within that challenging context. And that's where the demo will come in. I'm sure you'll love that. And then, of course, we'll look at some frequently asked questions regarding the integration. And if you have any questions, again, please do pop them in the Q&A section, wherever that button is floating around. I don't know where it is. Cool. So let's jump right into it. So a few months ago, we were sort of surveying the land. And we noticed a pretty common pattern among our legal customers and legal users as we were chatting to them. And there was sort of this theme that kept coming up from a challenge perspective. There was a greater expectation on legal to better service the business with less resources. And we kind of broke that down and noticed sort of 4 key areas in which that challenge kind of arose. So the first one is, we really felt that there was a pressure as a function to increase turnaround time, servicing revenue generating functions. So that might be the sales team within your organization. We felt that there was sort of this growing desire for legal to increase their turnaround time. 2, we commonly heard this phrase, sort of lack of visibility and centralization of key documents. So kind of potentially some of us here have heard that story where a salesperson will take a contract that they've used many months ago and sort of spin and pivot off that template. And before you know it, there's all these documents out there that you just have absolutely no control over. 3, we're hearing about inefficiencies caused by duplication of data across disparate systems. So multiple systems having the same data, having to update it across multiple systems and ultimately leading to sort of a disparity between the systems and, creating errors. And finally, increasing expectations of ensuring commercial data is accurate. So sort of the last line of defense as legal does that review prior to execution. There's sort of this onus and this burden on the shoulders of legal teams to actually look through and make sure that everything is perfect before they send it off for execution. And so it's within this context that we see Checkbox Center. Mindful that some of us may know Checkbox very well, some of us don't know Checkbox at all, but the one-line summary here is that Checkbox is a no-code automation product and platform that empowers non-IT users to build out process automation tools to service and address a lot of these challenges. So streamlining operations and digitizing service delivery and unlocking data. And in today's demo, we're actually going to see some of that interaction between not only the Checkbox platform to broader legal use cases, but also, of course, specifically in the commercial context, how does legal change its role as a cost center to be becoming a bit more operationally efficient with the way that they deliver their legal services and actually help revenue come into the business. So you'll see some of that today as well. Now, to help better understand, I guess, the types of use cases that Checkbox is better placed for, and again, this will tie in with the demo that we'll see today, there's sort of 4 broad areas that we see Checkbox being used for within legal. So the first one is legal intake and triage. So you can imagine the organization looking to answer some sort of question, needing some sort of legal advice, going through a legal front door. Then there's also contract workflows. We'll see that today. Of course, contracts is bread and butter to what legal does. And so automating contracts is a big part of what that interaction is between, say, sales and legal. Third, self-service knowledge. So just finding out some sort of general answer from legal. And finally, digital compliance, right? It's the ability for the organization to get on board with the policies that are set up and make sure that they're compliant. As mentioned, in the context of today's demo, we're actually going to be focusing on the contracts workflows side of things. So we're looking at how Salesforce integration enables a more efficient and faster way for legal to service the business. And so you'll be, I think, pleasantly surprised at how little legal is actually involved in the process from start to finish. Cool. Again, if you're not from a legal background, that's all good. Think about some of the ways that Salesforce can address some of the use cases you might be thinking about. So with that said, let's jump in to the demo. So let me go ahead and reshare my screen, and then we'll jump into this here. Alrighty. So in today's demo for the Salesforce integration, it's going to be quite subtle. So I'm going to call out sort of the 3 areas that the Salesforce integration addresses. So now, before I do that, actually, it's probably worth jumping not into the world of legal, but actually into the world of someone who's on the sales team. So let's imagine for a second, my name is Sandy. I'm a sales team member, and day in and day out, I kind of live and breathe Salesforce, and all the information that is related to Salesforce is sort of at my fingertips. And so what you should see on your screen now is an example of the types of information or the type of interface that I, as a salesperson, would typically interface with. And so you can see all my opportunities there. I've been really hungry for a deal from one of Elon Musk's companies. So I've just been hunting after those organizations. And so you can see some of those companies there. And so you can imagine, for me as Sandy, I'm really excited to close, let's say, one of my deals, potentially Twitter, and I just need legal to step in and help me close this deal out by reviewing a contract so that I can get it executed. So as Sandy, I might go into sort of an intake and triage tool that helps me sort out where my query needs to go. I click through, and lo and behold, it actually directs me to Checkbox. And specifically, it will direct me to one of the automation tools that helps me complete the contracting process. So as I click on it, I'll land on a page that says, in this case, NDA, and it's going to help me generate the commercial agreement. So the 3 areas that the Salesforce integration touches upon, firstly is, and I'll click on start here, is that you can actually use the email address of your Checkbox users to look up opportunities within Salesforce, and then bring that back into Checkbox to sort of place a constraint on the flow. So you can see here, we've got opportunity selection. It's asking me to select one of the existing opportunities to generate an NDA for. And what it's done is, in the background, sneakily, taken my email, gone to Salesforce and said, bring all the opportunities in, and then populated that into here. And so as Sandy, as a salesperson, it's very convenient for me to not have to sort of look across the 2 systems and say, which opportunity am I actually doing this for? It's all here in one spot, and I can obviously look for Twitter in this case. So go ahead and click on Twitter. And what the platform will then do is use that information to pull in additional attributes. And so we'll talk a bit more about attributes later in the webinar, but you can effectively take any attribute related to any sort of opportunity or even object within Salesforce. And so we can see here that our contract value is $5 million. The stage is proposal negotiation, and the close date is only a couple of weeks away. And that seems to be pretty consistent with what's on the Salesforce side as well. As you can see here, Twitter, $5 million. You can see the close date and then proposal negotiation. All right. Well, we now head on over to the second functionality that Salesforce, the Salesforce integration is capable of executing, which is the ability to sort of update those fields in Salesforce. So imagine for a moment that I, Sandy, look at these details and then received a call from Twitter, and they've suddenly said that actually these dates are incorrect. So what I can actually do is say, nope, this is incorrect. I'd like to update the details. Maybe they sort of want to hustle the contracting phase. So they said, hey, I actually want to move this particular opportunity to the next phase of the sales process. So what I can do here is actually select, say, stage, and the platform will tell me the stage of the current opportunity is in proposal/negotiation. And it will also allow me to choose a new stage that's been defined in Salesforce here in the drop-down level. So let's say it's in contracting now, which it is. What you can also do in Checkbox is actually build in checks and balances. So again, this is not really Salesforce related, but more just app design and best practice. So as an example, this process of actually updating information in Salesforce is relatively risky. So you do want someone like Sandy to make sure that they're confirming the details before they actually overwrite that information in Salesforce. So if I were to click next here without doing sort of the confirmation, it'll tell me actually you do need to confirm that before we can proceed, and it won't let me pass and it won't update the details in Salesforce. That's okay. Let me go ahead and click I confirm the new details are true. And the moment that I do that, instead of it being in proposal/negotiation, we actually see that the stage is now changed to contracting. And so you can see here that's kind of flow between Checkbox and Salesforce in that I, Sandy, have not had to leave Checkbox to go back into Salesforce and manually change data, potentially risking, again, that duplicate data being across two systems. But it actually allows me to seamlessly integrate that experience, and any corrections and amendments can be built into the process itself. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the details. So I'm going to continue here and say, yes, the details are correct. And we'll go ahead and click on next. Now, what happens is based on the actual opportunity or company name, we can actually also build in validation as part of our process on the Checkbox side. Of course, there is validation on the Salesforce side as well. But as you can see here, what we've done is based on the company name, we've actually pre-filled the business number, ABN, and the state of registration. But if I was, for example, not completely happy with this, I might say this is actually the incorrect company. I can go and re-type in Twitter. And what we've done here is connected Checkbox to sort of an external database that searches for the key term Twitter against all the businesses in Australia. And so you can do that so long as you have sort of a open API that you can make that call against. But you can see here, there are a whole bunch of companies that have the name Twitter in it, and maybe I've actually selected the wrong one inside Salesforce. And again, it's sort of coming back to one of the functionalities of the Salesforce integration. I can overwrite that information inside Salesforce if I would like. So if I choose, say, let's do something obvious here, Twitter babysitting, you'll notice that the details change. Again, if I choose like Twitter International Company, it'll change again. But for now, let's keep the one in New South Wales and keep it simple. And then we can add a couple of additional details here around the company short name, so the ticker symbol. And we're going to put in the counterparty name and email. I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to put in a fake person. So I'm going to put Milan Husk. I think that's pretty obvious. Cool. So we're actually going to see that kind of interaction between Sandy and Milan Husk throughout this process. So we've just put in their email so that they can be brought in to actually participate in this experience. Again, make it easy for both Sandy and the counterparty to complete this deal in the most seamless way possible. All right, one more page we need to fill out before we send this agreement off for execution. So the first thing here is just around purpose of the purpose of the engagement. Now we have a question here around how large the deal size is, and you can see that it's pre-filled with that $5 million from Salesforce. Now it says here, seeing as the NDA is, it's of significant financial value, it's gone past a threshold value that we as legal, or I should say legal because I'm standing in this case, legal is comfortable with. it will actually prompt a review. So if I just click a couple of things here, you'll notice that the system will note the $5 million deal and actually say that you'll need to go through legal to get this reviewed. And so right up to this point, from the moment of sort of the inception of the contract right through to sort of getting close to the execution side, not a single person from legal has actually been engaged. And this is good. This is by design. We want to reduce the amount of friction that legal potentially can place by speeding up sort of all the operational tidbits here, right? It's collecting the details. It's making sure it's correct. You're making sure it's consistent with Salesforce. It's putting into a template. All of these activities that would have taken time and putting that back on the business so that they can self-serve it and increase the turnaround time ultimately by only engaging legal when it's necessary. So I'm not going to click on next here because if I do that, the journey for me as Sandy ends. But you can imagine when I click on next, an email will be triggered for legal for them to review, and legal then steps in and then can provide judgment as to sort of what needs to happen next for a big deal like this. So if I go back, let's say, for example, actually in the initial instance, we don't want to go with $5 million. We want to instead go with $100,000, which is below the threshold. Again, we'll bake it in so that it actually overwrites the details within Salesforce. Instead of directing it towards legal, for a smaller deal like this, it'll actually allow us to go down the self-serve route. And so instead of on the page saying, you need to speak to legal, it actually says here, it actually will generate the document straight away. And so within Checkbox, what you can also do is actually start automating the contracts themselves. Allow someone like Sandy to actually self-serve some of the smaller contracts. And so you can see here the business number fills in, the kind of expected close date, the ticker symbol, and also pre-fills the choices that the user made or pre-fills the information from Salesforce into the document itself. So you can see some conditional clauses as well around trade secrets. I think it's at the bottom here, sorry. Oh, I think I chose no, that's why. I need to choose yes for trade secrets. Incorporating ChatGPT-3 into Twitter's ad algorithm, which I think is worth more than $100,000, wouldn't you say? So if I click on yes, you'll see here, the conditional clause mechanism also allows you to create relatively bespoke documents through the platform. And so because I chose yes to trade secrets, it'll actually include a clause there. All right, we're ready for execution. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next. It's going to tell me that the end date is going to be sent to the counterparty, remember Milan Husk, and they're going to be sort of involved in the end-to-end process now. So what you're going to see in a moment is I'm going to click on next as Sandy, but the experience will actually effectively swap over to Milan Husk, and an email will actually go into their email and they'll click on it and they will continue the journey as the counterparty. So imagine I click on next, it will say, thank you for me as Sandy. For Milan, I'll actually click a link inside my email. I'll open it up and lo and behold, I'll actually get a copy of the contract. So I can actually take a look at it myself. I can review the details and see if it's actually up to scratch with what my expectations are. And here's where it gets interesting. So imagine I've reviewed the particular agreement. I'll click on next. And then there are a few choices that we can make here as the counterparty. So the first choice that we can make is that we can just sort of execute it. So imagine we're happy with everything, which is honestly, we haven't seen it too often that it just goes straight through, but imagine that they're happy with it, they're ready to sign. Well, then, yeah, by all means, we can proceed to the e-signature stage and off it goes. Two, we can make minor changes. So in this context, minor changes is really the fields that we captured up until this point. Could be simple stuff like the business number that you saw, or it might be the close date. These things can actually be adjusted by the counterparty if you would like. But I think by far the most interesting one is actually the redlining concept or the negotiation side. So if, and probably 90% plus of cases, the counterparty comes back and says, actually, there's a couple of adjustments we need to make. That adjustment can happen within Checkbox. So if I click on next here, you can see here there's sort of an inbuilt ability for Counterparty to interface directly either with legal or with Sandy in sales, and they can directly edit the information here. And so you can say 1, 2, 3, 4 as an example and leave the comments there inside the document itself. And so you can actually go back and forth within Checkbox and build up that contract to the point where both sides are happy for it to be executed. It's really cool. I'm not going to go into depth too much on the redlining / negotiation side because we actually did a whole webinar on this. So if you haven't seen it already, go and check it out in our sort of Checkbox webinar archive. Aditi's done a wonderful job covering that particular functionality. So I'm sure you get a lot out of that webinar as well. But for now, let's imagine in the rare case that Milan Husk is happy to sign straight away. And I'll show you the third and final functionality that is available in Checkbox. So let's imagine I choose yes, click next, I'm ready for execution, and off it goes. And so with the integration that we have with DocuSign, any document that is generated within Checkbox can automatically be sent off to DocuSign for signature. It tells us that it's been sent off, and then Sandy was the other signatory. And so the third and final feature of the Salesforce integration is that we can upload files directly to the opportunities. I alluded to sort of that disparate key documents being sort of strewn about on, salespeople's laptops, and they're just never uploaded, and it's all over the shop, which only gets more problematic with scale. Gone are those days where that happens, because now with this integration, you can directly upload those files into the opportunities themselves as they get finished off. So there's the V1 document. The executed file will also, of course, be uploaded and into the opportunity itself. So you'll be able to see all the files and see all the sort of iterations in one spot for you as a legal team to actually see. So really cool. So quickly to summarize before we look at some of the setup side and some frequently asked questions, there are sort of 3 functionalities of the Salesforce integration that we've been able to see. So one is being able to pull in opportunity data directly from Salesforce to ensure that the data that we're working with is up to date and accurate. 2, we've seen the ability to actually update that information in Salesforce. So if we're not happy with the current state of things, or if things change very quickly, we can update it. And 3, the ability to actually upload documents and centralize all the key documents that are related to a particular opportunity or to a particular object in Salesforce all in one spot. All right. Well, I do want to show you the setup side a little bit, and then we'll jump into some frequently asked questions. But just before we jump into the setup side, I'm going to shoot out a poll. So if you're interested in, let me just launch this out first. Quick question here around if you'd like to reach out or if you have any questions. So it's going to pop up on your screen. Give about 30 seconds, and then we'll jump into the setup side. But of course, feel free to participate in that poll if you'd like to know more about Checkbox and or Salesforce. Give that 30 seconds or so. Now, while that's sort of hovering, I do want to show you how we've kind of set up the Salesforce integration side on Checkbox. Whenever we hear the word integration, it's always a little scary for users, honestly, because they say, hey, do I need to know how to code? What should I expect? And so early on when we were engaging our users to think through how we actually might set up the Salesforce integration, we noticed that one kind of big thing was the ability to set it up without any code, which is part of what we do here at Checkbox, and B, do it in a way that kind of meets the custom needs of their organization. I'll explain what that means in a second. So in Checkbox, we have a block called the Salesforce block, and using drag and drop, you can literally bring in a block and form or place it where in the process where you think it makes the most sense. And so in this case, early on, and I'll just end the poll here, we saw that there was the sort of find a record capability, and we can choose the opportunity, and we can actually define what type of information we want flowing between the two systems, whether we want all the attributes or some of the attributes. You can actually balance that. So you don't need to code at all. But at the same time, we wanted to increase the ceiling of what is possible with the Salesforce integration. And one common thing we heard in conversations was that a lot of the integrations or Salesforce integrations that our users had previously interacted with were constrained to the sort of default objects that were in Salesforce, so, opportunities, leads, accounts, etc. And they really wanted to have some way to interface with custom objects. And potentially this is where some of us here today also probably feeling that, this integration needs to kind of get up to. So the custom objects dilemma issue is not unique. I think most organizations face it. Given any amount of time, you can imagine Salesforce being adapted by all the different owners that have sort of passed it along. And the idea that custom objects exists is a common one. So we introduced a sort of, condition section in every single block so that you can create a custom experience for whatever you need the integration to do. So if you wanted to look up all opportunities with the name, in this case, like Twitter in it, then you can actually do that. You can define the name, or if you wanted to look at all opportunities that were formed between January 1st, 2023 and January 1st, 2024, then you can do that as well. So we wanted to create more flexibility and enable the ability to sort of dive into customized objects and, of course, sort of niche queries as well. Awesome. I've already started to go through some of the frequently asked questions, so I might as well knock off the rest of them. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen. As always, as I mentioned, if you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A section. More than happy to go through them. But we're coming to the sort of three main questions that we often hear with the Salesforce integration. But before we do that, just a quick recap on the benefits of this integration. So first, it'll help deals get done quicker. So you saw that from Sandy's perspective, it was pretty quick to jump in, fill in the details, and engage legal if necessary, but often just go ahead and execute the agreement because the process was defined by legal. You see the reduction of double entry, so eliminating inefficiencies, not having to copy paste across different platforms. Three, the experience for the user to sort of do all of this within a single tool. And four, the seamless business connection, so data consistency and ensuring that we sort of have the same data across the organization. All right, so frequently asked question number one is, can you execute a checkbox contract from Salesforce? You saw the experience from within Checkbox itself, but often what we hear is the sales team lives in Salesforce. Can we actually take that experience and place it inside Salesforce? And the answer is, of course. You can, of course, create that experience in Salesforce. You will need to tweak the Salesforce side, but we've seen everything from sort of in the background payload from Salesforce going to Checkbox, and then Checkbox will kind of generate the contract in the background and send it back, to sort of embedding. So you will actually take that experience that you saw earlier, and in the spirit of better interfaces, and you might embed that inside Salesforce and actually get the user to interact with it from that side. So whatever way you take it, just needs configuration on the Salesforce side. It's completely possible. The second most common question that we get is, can you launch entire Checkbox workflows? So not just the contract generation, but potentially all different types of workflows inside Salesforce, whether that be, I think we said digital compliance earlier and self-serve help, apps. Again, the answer there is yes, you can absolutely do it. In fact, what we can actually support as well is taking specific Salesforce attributes, whatever those might be, and using that to trigger particular checkbox workflows. And so if in the context of potentially, let's say, digital compliance, if there's a policy that needs to be checked, then you can actually take that information from Salesforce and then directly feed that into Checkbox and kick off that workflow. So not just contracts, it can be any type of workflow. Next question that we get is, how many Salesforce accounts can you integrate with Checkbox, and whose accounts will the apps be connected to? I think this question comes up a lot because every salesperson has their own Salesforce account. And so there's often a scare as to how this might actually work in practice. So the answer to the first question is, you can have as many Salesforce accounts integrate with Checkbox. Typically what we see is one kind of sales at, say, Twitter account or a centralized sales account be integrated. And that will be sort of the conduit by which these opportunities are sort of looked up. Just makes it easier so that when users change or leave the organization, we don't have to reintegrate each time. And whose account will the apps be connected to? And that's up to you to define. We actually leave it up to you. So if there's a case where you need to integrate with sales at twitter.com, but you, for whatever reason, need to look it up under a specific salesperson's name, potentially maybe to hide all the opportunities, which again, just comes down to how you set up Salesforce and the processes that you have. It'll come out under the account that calls that particular API. So you can actually define it at a modular level. And final question is, does the Salesforce integration work with custom objects? And we've already covered this. The answer is yes, yes, yes. This was a big point for us, and we wanted to make sure that our users were able to do some pretty complex stuff with the integration without necessarily needing to code. And so you can absolutely look up custom objects that your organization may have formed over time. So don't fret, that is possible. Cool. So we've kind of come to the end of the road. Hopefully through today's session, you've been able to learn a bit more about the struggles within legal and what Checkbox is and what it does. And of course, most importantly, what our latest Salesforce integration is able to do on our platform. And so if you have any questions, please, again, leave them in the Q&A section. Feel free to reach out. My email is minu@checkbox.ai. We'd be more than happy to kind of walk through additional questions. So again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we will catch you at the next one. Thanks, guys.